Resume our recording. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us here for our GIODN virtual meeting. We have an amazing session planned for you today, and we are on our new technology. I know everybody has probably been on Zoom more times than they can count over the past few months, but us here at GIODN, we had been using a different platform, so we decided to move to this Zoom platform to give you more opportunities to engage with us, and we are really getting the hang for us, and I think we're going to have a really great session. So thanks so much for joining us here today for our July 20th special session, the virtual leadership and the challenges of change with David Sibbet and Gisela Wendling from Growth Consultants. And they have a special and fantastic session planned for us today. So thanks so much to them for joining us. I did mention in the chat, and I just want to mention once again, that we would love for you to change your name to add in where you're coming to us from. So if you can, just after your name, put a little comma in the little rename box and just name the city and the area that you're coming from, state, country. Just that gives us an opportunity when we're seeing everybody to know where you're from, because this is the Global Institute of Organization Development Network, and we know we have people coming to us from all over the world, and we just want to know a little bit more about you. It gives us a little bit better opportunity to interact. So before we jump into the session here, I just wanted to introduce myself and what this organization that we're working with here today is about. So I am Dr. Cindy Vanier, and I am a strategy consultant with the Institute of Organization Development. And I'm also an instructor for Organization Development Certified Professional. And I'm so excited to fill that role, as well as to help our Institute of Organization Development be the leading provider in organization development certifications in the United States for sure, and probably also around the world. And I know more about that, but that's me leading us here and facilitating our fantastic presenters for us tonight. So this presentation tonight, this virtual meeting, is brought to you by the Global Institute of Organization Development Network, GIODN. This is the largest, the fastest growing OD network in the world, really looking to connect OD professionals and provide some additional support, information like we're having here today with our virtual meeting, as well as access to special speakers and book clubs, regular book clubs. Those are some of the things that we do that are big value adds for our members. We also have a brand new directory that lists your professional qualifications so that the next job, the next career move that you're looking to make, you have all of that on display, and people can find you. That's why people come to GIODN, to look for the best and the brightest professionals in organization development. We have also a brand new set of tools in our toolkit that's available to our members. We have premium tools and professional tools, and the members get access to all of our tools, as well as premier listings in our OD directory. So definitely check that out. If you are not yet a member, please join us at giodn.org and get on our mailing list, as well as participate in additional events like this. So GIODN is our professional networking home, but our home for professional development is Institute of Organization Development, IOD. And we offer certifications in the field of OD, in organization development, talent management, leadership development, executive coaching, and HR business partner. We have classes that are going online, and what we do best is in online learning. So we have our certifications are completely virtual. We have a new learning management system that helps facilitate your learning, and a great interface for you to stay connected with your peers around the world, as well as connect with people who have had experience in the organization development field for more than 30 years. And I know our founder is on the line here, Dr. Nancy Zentis. Dr. Zentis, do you want to flip on your mic and tell us a little bit about what's going on at IOD?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Nancy Zentis, and I just wanted to welcome Giselle and David I'm so happy that you're able to share your valuable time with us to share the wonderful work that you're doing. Thank you everyone for joining us. And I look forward to meeting each and every one of you. And I just hope you have a fabulous time in over the next 60, what is it, an hour and a half, right?
Yeah, our virtual meetings are 90 minutes. So we got
90 minutes. So yeah, please take advantage of this opportunity, and just note that our fabulous presenters are here for you, and they have, they have a lifelong learning of tools that they've provided and that we all value very, very much. So thank you both so much for being here today, and everyone for joining us. Thanks, Cindy.
Yeah, thank you. And so if you're interested in signing up for some of our digital courses, we also have short courses of professional development. And if you want just a little bit of a peek into the industry, we also have a free web ongoing. You can find that all on our calendar at instituteod.com. So definitely check that out. Classes are starting all the time with us. So without further ado, oh, this is not a book club, this is a virtual meeting. So let me tell you about how our virtual meetings work today. So we are going to be connecting here. Our facilitators, our special guests are going to be leading us through. I'm going to be here in the background helping out. Have a question, you can put it in the chat, and I will be able to help with that. But we are going to be engaged with our special guests here, and they are going to be putting us into some breakout rooms for some additional discussion. And we're going to be learning some techniques that can help really bolster our OD practice. So without further ado, let me go ahead and hand it over to them, because this is really exciting for me. Let me, a lot of times for our GIOD events, we have people from Dr. Nancy Zentis' vast network of OD professionals all over the world coming and joining us. And she had been connected with Gisela and David. But I actually, even though my career is, only around 11 years old in the organization development field, I have actually been very big fans of the work that David and Gisela have been doing as well, because of my work overseas, working with different populations of folks and trying to communicate across language and power barriers. I was very drawn to the visual techniques of which we're going to see today. So I had also been a very big fan. I think I was gushing over them the couple of practice sessions that we had, but I'm just so excited. Cannot wait for you to interact and see what they bring to the table that can help all of our practice. So without further ado, David and Gisela, let me hand it over to you so we can, I'll stop sharing my screen, and David, you can go ahead and share your slides, or Gisela, okay, who is going first?
Yes, I will. Can you all see these?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
We like the thumbs up.
Yes, you can go into the participants and add in your yes, no, maybe, things like that.
I'll just, we'll introduce ourselves very quickly here and then get into it. I've been running a OD consulting firm since 1977 and have tried all kinds of things. And we have been in full pivot into virtual work. And it's a delight to be sharing. And I'm seeing some folks that I know here. How you doing, Matteo? And Joy. Gisela, why don't you say a few words about yourself and then we'll dive in.
Right. Well, hi, everybody. Indeed, it's good to see all of you. Many I don't know and some I do. And it is really great to see some familiar faces right here. And it's a nice surprise. So I'm Gisela Wendling. I've been in the field of organization development since the early 90s. I actually had the pleasure of running a master's program in organization development here at Sonoma State University for several years. And what can I say? I divide my time between practitioner development, which I just love, and facilitating large-scale change processes. So I really would like to wrap my arms around a whole process and guiding a client through the entire curve of a change process. And I'm also the executive director for our Global Learning and Exchange Network, where we bring together practitioners to, in a pure learning environment, to explore the questions at the edge of our practice and what we need to do to evolve our practice of collaboration within and across organizations and cultures. So, and with all of that, I have my hands full and I love what I do. All right, David?
Well, one of the tools that we use graphically is to share the outcomes, agenda, roles, and rules for a meeting. And this is the tool, those of you who are familiar with the GROW, called the ORS tool. So outcome, agenda, roles, and rules. And it helps you navigate a dynamic river if you get some agreements ahead of time. So in terms of the outcomes, we have two frameworks that we've been using to manage change that we've been now teaching online virtually, and we want to have you learn these because they're very important for this time of the pandemic to understand what is really going on in the inner and the outer processes of change. Secondly, we want you to get some examples of working virtually and understand how it expands participation across distance and culture. We're getting some really nice results on some of the things we're doing. We want to share some of that. And finally, explore the role of being a learning leader during times of transition and virtual work. And this is the frame that we're increasingly putting on this problem because people do not know how this is going to work out. And so you've got to be able to enroll people in collaborative learning. So Gisela's going to go over the rest of it and we'll be
Okay, great. So we'll keep this super brief, so do you have East Coast time here, David? Is that what you're doing with 5 p.m.? Okay, all right. East Coast time here. But what we'll be doing is we'll talk a little, some about our 7 challenges of change model that we've developed. And then I will introduce you into an underlying framework that's called Liminal Pathways Framework that outlines sort of the basic dimension and patterns of change that are universally applicable. So very helpful to understanding actually what change is. And then we'll share with you about the UC Merced case and to talk about the inner and outer dynamics of change and how they play out when you look at these together. And we'll go from there talking about learning leadership and how important it is to step into learning leadership in major times of transitions. All of that will set you then up to have a really juicy triad group where you get to talk for 15 minutes to each other. It feels really important that we take time for that. And then we'll come back and just have some pop-ups and hear from you what stands out to you and insights that you have. And then we will close with some final comments and be sure to be done by East Coast time 6:30. All right. So then we have roles. We always talk about the roles. It's always good to remember what our jobs is when we show up in a meeting, right? So David and I will do a fair bit of presenting and then, setting you up for the triads and the discussion. And of course, we are thankful to our host, the GIODN. And then for you is to fully engage. And that's like, it's up to you how you listen, and we want you to really be there with us and follow along with the slides. And if you have thoughts and ideas, write them down. You're welcome to use chat to share some reflections. David and I can't track that also at the same time, but that might be helpful for you to just feel a sense of engagement. And then finally, please stay muted so we can eliminate white noise. Toggle, remember you can toggle between speaker view and grid view. I always like to see the whole group, for example, but whatever works for you. And once we get to the breakouts, we'll give you specific instructions for that because we want that to work well. All right.
Well, thank you, Gisela. We're going to start, and we kind of advertised that we would talk about the challenges of change. And I'm going to sit with this one slide for a little bit here and explain it to you visually.
Hey, This
Yes?
is Cindy. You know, we were, what possible for you to actually show the slides as a slideshow? Just make it, it will make a little bit bigger for us. Is that possible?
I can't write on it
Oh,
if I do, but I can make it a little bit bigger. Hold on. How's that?
I think that helps a lot. Yes, that's
A
right.
little
That's
bit
part.
more, David. You can make it a little more.
That's as big as I can
Okay.
in this venue. Hold on a second. Maybe a little bit bigger. How's that?
There we go. Yeah.
Yes, that helps a lot. Thanks so much. We really appreciate that.
Okay. One of the things about PowerPoint is it's really good with the pen. So I'm on a little tablet here, and you can write on it. So this image here has a lot packed into it. It is basically, from the broadest perspective, what this graphic is saying is you can't really go from 1 of thinking you need to change to 7 and sustain it long term without going through the challenge of the ambiguous not knowingness of what we call the turn. The turn is this angle down here. And basically, the model shows a progression of types of challenges that tend to show up. And for those of you who are familiar with Grove models, this is a keyboard model in that it shows you a list of the challenges kind of in order of when which ones are the most fundamental. But the timing can change as people loop and do things different ways. So if it were a real piano keyboard, the piano music can be quite varied depending on the situation. So the overall model, you may notice there are these background colors, and there are 4 letters over here. And they stand for kind of the 4 kinds of flows and process that are going on all the time. You've got a flow of attention that you need to manage when you're doing things. You have a flow of energy. You have a flow of information. And you have a flow of operations. And for those of you who've ever used the Myers-Briggs or any of those things, this is getting at intuition, feeling, thinking, and sensing. So we have these centered on different layers because the focus tends to move as you go from challenge to challenge. We're not going to go over all of these 7 things, but we want to really focus on these 2 big words here in initiating and actualizing. That one of the key things right now is how do you initiate people moving into being learning leaders and changing? And then how do you take people through this turn period that's got a lot of ambiguity? And then how do you sustain things in a trajectory once people have determined that there is something that they want to collectively work on? So on the initiating side, we've come to realize there are actually 3 different types of change that can activate people's awareness of the need to do something different. One kind of change is developmental. Organizations, you know, mature and they have to go to new stages. People mature and go to new stages. There's volitional change, which is leaders have a new strategy and they want people to do something different. And then you have situational or circumstantial change, which is what we're now, in a way, experiencing with the COVID pandemic, which is things happen in the larger environment that really support change. So with these different kinds of things pushing people into the need to change, people then go through a predictable set of cycles, each one of which is a chance to learn more and more, heading down toward what do we want to learn about what we want to do together. So you may notice that there are these red and blue beads, and Gisela is going to say something about what's going on with part of the project.
Great, yeah. So part of the model is these 2 DNA looking like chains of beads. And they come from a framework that arose out of my research on rites of passages. And I will speak to that a little bit more, but one of them is about the dimension that we call the inner process dynamics of change that winds itself through an entire change process. And then there's also the outer process structure, the blue beads, that are really the processes and structures that can be thought of as the container in which people can do the work of changing. And the way that the two of them worked together create these very important dynamics of momentum of change, the energy of change, and ultimately, when they work really well, can move through all of the obstacles that change provides.
So let's zoom in on that. Can we zoom in on that, Gisela?
Yeah, totally. So now if you bring up the next slide, and you can't quite see the title here, but what the title says, it's a liminal pathways change framework. And so this is an overview of this framework. And there are two patterns here that I want to highlight. And the first pattern that is thought to be present in any type of change, is this, that there are three phases. There's a phase of separation from the old, there's an in-between or transition zone, and out of that become an integrate or implement the change. These patterns are applicable to any level of change. Like, for example, right now, you know, the pandemic is a huge worldwide global experience. And we could say we are somewhere at the beginning of dealing with this, but we are certainly haven't figured it out and are in the process of integrating, but we are in a big phase of uncertainty about it. When you apply this model to a personal change, like moving from one city to another or making a career change, again, it is applicable. So it's scalable to the level of system you're working in. And that's also true, you can zoom into like this, the model, the 7 challenges of change. It really applies to large scale, complex organizations. And in order to move through an entire change process, you have smaller change processes embedded within that. And we are actually referring to these as some of the core challenges or opportunities in a way. All right, so then the second dimension or pattern that is always present in a change process is that there is an inner process dynamic, like I said earlier, and an outer process structure that together have to work together. And in the end, our belief is that unless the change take holds in the person, and it's only out there, it's not really a transformative change. We might have moved something on the Titanic, like the chairs, but the Titanic is still going under. So the question is, you know, how do we really work on a transformative change where the actual thing changes? And we talk about this here, and the language we use is the old self to the new self, or the old organization becomes changed in the transformed organization. Yeah, so let's actually, let's go to the next slide, David. So I want to talk a little bit more about the 3 phases of change here. And so they're in the first phase, in the phase of separation, and let me actually just say, so the liminal pathways frameworks comes out of a lot of research that has been done in traditional cultures, and particularly rites of passages, right? And this is where it became so visible that there are 3 phases. And then once we could see this more clearly, we began to also identify them in more contemporary context. In traditional cultures, you have change processes held by rites that support the process over. In a way, you could see or think a lot of what we do as organization development practitioners, that we facilitate these rites, these forward movements, by concentrating the energy of the change in the meetings that we facilitate. So, and David spoke about the initial phase of separation, and that there are these different types of change: developmental, volitional, and situational. But regardless of where you start, you always enter into a phase of this uncertainty that is in the second phase. And we move through a significant period of transition marked by uncertainty, ambiguity, and the unknown. And with that often come feelings of emptiness, vulnerability, trepidation, but also insight and hope and sense of possibility. It's a very rich experience. This all happens before we arrive at the new stage of the new self and the new organization. So I'm sure this sounds familiar to you. This is the wonderful thing about this framework. It easily resonates and people don't forget it. So I just want to invite you for a moment to tune into your own feelings in connection with the pandemic. Just take a moment and not knowing how it will turn out. Once you get a bit of a feeling to that, you know, that's what it feels like to be in the middle of a change when it's unpredictable. You don't know how it's going to turn out. You can make good plans, you can put good structures in place, but it's not predictable. And it's the same also if you're working all of a sudden totally virtually. What does it feel like not to have your familiar social markers for interaction? All of a sudden things are different. It's just not quite the same. So these feelings are to some degrees always present in a change process when we're in between. And let me just say a little bit more about this word liminality. That's the social, it comes out of the social sciences, and it means threshold or passageway between two separate places or internal states. So again, we have separate places, and with that come a shift in internal states. So crossing of threshold between locations, status, there's often a change in position, in mental states. There's, you know, the distance between war and peace, illness and death, death and rebirth. So it's sort of like present in our lives a lot. And if we don't mark it very well, we stay in the limbo for longer than we need to. Right? So that's part of the challenge of change, is to bring change processes to completion. And so, and again, the gifts that we gain by going through this. So maybe the final point here that I want to make is that in order for us to learn, we have to be uncertain. So uncertainty is the great precondition for actually evolving and learning and developing. So we can embrace this. The better we are at embracing the uncertainty, the more we can make out of it. And that's a lot of the change work that leaders need to work with. And the point that we want to make here is that how important it is to adopt the characteristics and qualities of being a learning leader in order to help and partner with others to navigate this in-between zone. And then finally, the outer structure piece again, or the outer support, again, a lot of the work that we do as organization development practitioners or process leaders is to create the containers or the process containers or the interim process containers for people to do the work of changing, right? So there are temporary structures that we put into place to help those people who need to navigate this territory of uncertainty in a better way. And it helps remove, it actually provides a lot of stability to have an outer structure put into place. All right, David, and
thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to take you into two cases that show you principally, you know, how do you move from this activating awareness? I mean, our awareness is very activated right now with the whole pandemic. The question is, how do you then go into engaging a learning group to do something about it? And so we're going to share with you a story of a year-long process at the University of California, Merced, which actually was half and half in person and virtual. And then share a little story about a completely virtual process where CEOs were pivoting to being learning leaders. And we will be modeling a little bit the kinds of tools that you can use. Of course, with the short amount of time, we can't go into in depth on these, But a lot of these tools are what are used then in stage 3, where you get people to actually think about plausible futures and imagine visions and things like that. So let's take you into the story. Eric Rowland was a client of ours at the School of Engineering, and we did a strategic planning process for him in preparation for a new dean. And he called up and said, would you meet with Michael Reese, our Vice Chancellor of Administration? He has a big problem, and I think you guys could help with it. The Chancellor has just announced that the UC Merced campus of 6,500 students, this is now 2016, is going to double in size by 2020. And she announced it, and it was in the papers. And he was facing 72 different projects on his desk and trying to figure out how to balance them. So we started out, this is actually the chart from the very first meeting. It was right opposite Michael on the wall. Gisela was sitting next to him on his right. The ones that are highlighted in yellow, and I don't expect you to read all these things, but he was, what was on top of mind for him was, how do we deal with paying for this campus, this growth? How do we attract new faculty? How can we get the faculty to care about it and be accountable? You know, he's thinking about a whole bunch of things. And it was very clear that they were in a time of tremendous uncertainty. And given what Gisela just said about uncertainty being an opportunity, we thought, aha, we will share with him our frame for this, which is that turbulence, uncertainty, and change are normal. So in this very first meeting, we shared this idea that in the S curve, which is a fairly standard way of thinking about 3 phases of organizational growth, from startup to growth to mature, what we know is that change doesn't happen neatly from A to B, as we said. You have to go through the turn. You have to go through a time of uncertainty and a liminal period. So we made that red mark on the S curve and circled it and said, this is very predictable. It's turbulent, it's uncertain, it's changing, and that's good news because it means you're moving. You've actually started moving out of the startup phase to the growth phase. And so as leaders of this project, it would be really helpful to declare that these things are not only normal, they're actually got some positive value.
Yeah, and David, and what is helpful to add here is that by identifying that this shift is a time of great turbulence and uncertainty, and that it can be expected, it now no longer was the fault of anyone. Before then, there were more the finger pointing, people who weren't doing it right anymore, who seemed stuck in the startup. And so it took it out of a blaming place and making it personal to understanding, oh, this is what happens. And that people may resist change or may not want to move along or don't. It's clearly that some of the people who are in a startup mode have different competencies that may be needed later, but this is normal. It's not people's faults. That was very helpful to them.
So this story was really pointing at what they could expect in terms of the inner dynamics. And, you know, back where he started, he was talking a lot about the relational challenges and issues, which are very different than the economic and structural issues. So that was helpful to do that, but he needed to be confident we could handle the outer structure. So we shared this with him in our proposal, which he asked for, which is basically a proof of concept. It basically says, we know what this process could look like. And we've managed this kind of thing before. And what it does is it gives that temporary, it's a light scaffolding, it's a light framework to give people confidence that, oh, even though everything's uncertain, we have a process which we can prescribe. So graphically, it's very simple. Circles are meetings, arrows are projects done in between meetings, and squares are actual graphic outputs from the meeting. And it's in channels. So we also made it extremely clear that the key thing that was going to make this work was that second challenge of change. If I go back here to look at it, engaging change leaders, we really needed to have a support group redo this as a way of having them own it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Maybe if I could just add one thing. So we introduced to them this process map, but we were also very clear that this process map was very flexible and was going to evolve as the process evolved. But even that was much more anchoring and helpful than having, no process map at all, right?
Yeah.
So we're removing uncertainty where you can, but still staying flexible and working with what is emerging.
So he agreed that this is a good idea, that we need to figure out priorities, and a big graphic map of our priorities is a good way to do it. He really got excited about this story mapping idea, and he really got excited about the design team. So we had our first design team meeting, and I'll tell this story because we had 1 foot in the new world that's emerging, the virtual world, and 1 foot in the old world. So here's the old world at the Grove office. And fortunately, UC Merced's faculty spread all over. To hire their people, they had to hire a lot of people from the Bay Area, and they actually were used to working virtually, but they really liked the idea of actually having a little offsite at our office in San Francisco, in the Presidios. So here they are, Gisela is opening the meeting. And you may notice over here, one of the outer supports is we had the ORS chart all prepared in advance and up on the wall. But these basically, Gisela, why don't you say something?
Yeah. So in terms of the work that we did with the change team, and at least in terms of how we got started, in terms of what we observed as part of the inner process, is that there was great hope for what could be done and a great sense of trepidation. And is this like, how in the world are we going to do this? Why are we the ones who have been chosen to guide this change? They had never worked together before. So there was already a lot of uncertainty in just that.
And doubling.
Yeah, internally. Yeah, right. And there was also, I mean, this is more of an interpretation, but there was a sense, okay, are we adequate to the task at hand? Can we be this empowered to actually guide this change process, make decisions on prioritizations? And because they had not done this before, they were all out on a limb. They were in organizational white space, and they had to invent, with our help, how to navigate that territory. So, and some of it you could tell, there's a great deal of surprise, so I didn't expect that I would be doing this. So that's how it starts out, right? And then you have to build the team. And this is where the outer support structure comes in terms of creating a really clear charge for these people. It's like, this is our work for these coming months. How are we going to work together? Over the course of several sessions, initially, we helped them create some operating principles, because they needed to have guidance for how they're going to do this work that there was no precedence for. And we created a decision-making model to help them. How are we going to make decisions? And how are we going to work in person? And some of the work needs to happen virtually.
And we did the work.
Yeah, and then what we also help them understand at this time, at this point, that what they need is a collaboration backbone. They need to have some kind of work infrastructure that they need to set up internally to support this whole process, because we're talking about a university-wide initiative. And so that's all part of the backbone. The collaboration backbone is all part of the outer support structure.
Fortunately, the Grove had already been working virtually quite a bit. And we worked all during the 90s and early 2000s with the Institute for the Future, looking at groupware and how it works. And so we had set up next door another room, and we were able to zoom in to a group of advisors who were on campus. And so the provost wasn't able to come to this initial meeting, and he wasn't going to be on the design team, but he was a pretty important person to have in there. And so this meeting turned out to be a real important turning point where this group here could really listen and learn from the group that was on campus. And I'm sitting here in the middle on a tablet. And this is what I was writing. This is actually a copy of the tablet notes. And when you're doing live recording, you can't do a huge amount of fancy drawing. It's going very fast. But this is all organized around two very simple questions. What success would you like from what you see, and what are you worried about? So the successes were in circles, and the worried were in these little arrows at the bottom. So we're not going to go over the content, but what was important is on this last slide, they began getting at this set of things here around. We need to tell our story. We need to build a shared vision. What are we doing with our culture? What are we doing with research? The fact that they were doubling was driven by economics, but they didn't have a story. They did not have a directional story that was coming from the system as a whole, dreaming something. So that ended up catalyzing the whole project becoming not just a change alignment project for the 72 projects, but a visioning and change alignment project that ended up involving the whole campus. Big summit meetings, streaming, video, all those kind of things. And you can read all about it in our book, Visual Consulting. We really treat it in depth analysis of this, but here's where we ended up. They ended up, after a year, having a tremendous amount of alignment on a directional vision, which was illustrated in a spiral suggested by the chancellor to suggest the dynamic, evolving nature of the vision. This isn't like a static plan that will be exactly done that way. It's directional, and it's hovering over an image of the new expanded double campus. But they also agreed on their near-term priorities, their 2017 priorities, after a tremendous number of go-arounds. We tried initially to get them to agree on 5 years of priorities, and they wouldn't do it because it was unpredictable. It didn't make sense to lock into something, but it made a huge amount of sense to have a direction and agree on their immediate priorities. And more importantly, even than that, they agreed on a set of guidelines for making future decisions in the next year and the next year and the next year. This chart here had 100% agreement from the chancellors, the leaders, the cabinet, the design team, 200 staff people at Summit, and all the faculty people. It was quite remarkable and made a huge difference in creating a structure of stability in the midst of a lot of turbulence. So this is a story half and half, but it does show you how the graphics can play a role, how virtual work can play a role. You want to add anything finally on this, Gisela?
Oh, thank you. That was good.
Okay. So.
Yeah, so I'll speak to this here. So we've already mentioned how helpful it is to say that when you're going through a change process, it is not how much you know, but how quickly you can learn, right? It's really about, you're saying a shift from being a strategic leader who is clear about the plans. That is not what you need. You don't need to be clear about the plans. I mean, you want to be clear on the process, but not the final plans and the goals and the vision. And being comfortable with being a learning leader, comfortable with not knowing. And actually, when I think about it, Michael Weiss, the VP for Business Administration, he was a wonderful model for this. He could hold the container of the tension for the change team to struggle with this. It was really wonderful to have him there and track along. And he had a very close relationship with us so that we could hold this container well together. That's really important. And so we with him held the container for the change team, and the change team held the container for the larger processes in the organization. So, and also to create, this is about creating stability, invite others to make sense of what is going on. So when things are uncertain and the typical markers are present, people need to talk. And guiding this talk through structured processes can be very helpful. So communication is very helpful. Communication plan upfront our change process is very helpful. They created their own webpage on the university website to keep everybody informed about how this project was unfolding. So, and out of this meeting making that we have to do, what is going on, and when particularly right now, let's take a moment to think about the pandemic that we're in. A lot of people need to talk about the pandemic to just get a sense of what's going on, to begin to see patterns, because clearly we only hold a section of what we're seeing. So this meaning making is really important before we even can think about where we should be heading, right? And so that's also part of the learning leader. So the learning leader is open to learning and creates possibilities for others to participate in the meaning making process and in developing the direction, because a leader or a leadership team or the executives by themselves don't get the fuller picture. This is why in our work at the Grove, we come from this much more participatory approach, because we learn that when we do that, actually something emerges that resonates with most, and then people know how to take action on it, and there is not as much of resistance. So it is really a co-creative process.
So we want to end this by sharing a story, recent story, post-pandemic, starting with the large firm roundtable of the American Institute of Architects. This is an organization that I've worked with for quite a while. And the Large Firm Roundtable is an independent nonprofit of CEOs of large architecture and engineering firms. And we had a face-to-face meeting looking at disruptors to the field of architecture. What's really disrupting the whole industry? Back in North Carolina a couple of months before, and they wanted to have a follow-up. And of course, the pandemic hit and they couldn't do it. So they had to go virtual. And these people were all kind of, you know, some of them were more used to working at a distance than others. Turns out that the incoming president of this group is one of our clients at the Grove. He's the head of a big architecture engineering firm. And the current president, Carol Wedge, was a person who was up to trying something new. She hadn't done Zoom a lot or anything, but she says, let's go for it. And what they did is we set up a very simple process of a whole bunch of breakout groups around two of the biggest questions they had. What are we going to do with this working from home thing? How are we going to do our business at full virtual? And then secondly, what do we do about the technology side? Because there's clearly implications. So they would go into breakouts, and we did not overstructure it. We just had these simple questions. But the 5 people, when I went into those breakouts, I have worked with this group for a lot of years. I have never experienced the level of openness and candor, and I'd even say almost in a way intimacy, because everybody's was the same size picture on the screen, and you were all looking into their rooms in their houses. And it was remarkable how they opened up to these questions. That's what I took away, was just how much this is a change. It's not the old way of working, and it's not, we don't know yet the new, but it's got properties that are interesting. And just to give you an example graphically, I was again taking notes on a tablet. This is just a fraction of one of them, but this is the work from home report. And, you know, they were thinking about opportunities, like maybe we can be more productive. Maybe we can structure collaboration. What about R&D, sharing screens? But they also were getting zoomed out, you know, less magic, exhaustion. And they went on and what really struck me about these folks is they spontaneously started bringing up their empathy for their single workers, single mothers, and for the potential of a whole generation of architects not being hired. And what were they going to do about interns? I was really blown away. And this was about a 4-hour meeting, but that's an example of how, you know, this particular organization decided to pivot to being a bunch of learning leaders, at least for those hours. Yeah, Gisela?
Yeah, I just want to add on the point you're making in terms of the kind of relationships that can evolve when people are actually in a change process together. And you may just be noticing this right now as well, as in this time of pandemic where there's a lot of uncertainty, that people really crave actually being together and finding camaraderie and belonging in talking with each other about what's going on. And we really shouldn't underestimate the power of that relational web that people form to find support. So there's the term in rites of passages for this is actually communitas. And it's something that we really should learn a lot about, because it is such a valuable way for people to organize themselves in the midst of change that are outside of existing structures and processes, because often they are not the ones that we've had, may not be adequate to what we need to be doing now. And so people organize themselves a bit differently, and that actually helps the innovative process and brings in a bit more spirit and innovation. But you can't formalize it. You can't will it. So, yeah.
The other thing we're finding, and I think many of you are probably finding this out, you can't do as much. You have to prepare twice as much. You have to be simpler with what you're doing. You may have to stagger it over a series. All these things we're finding out in working, you know, people can't sit for 6 or 7 hours at a Zoom meeting. You need lots of breaks.
Yeah.
But the
Now let's do that now, David, right? Let's go on the triads and give them a break from listening to talking to each other.
Good timing.
Yeah. Do you want me to go over this here? I can.
Over, and I will put it in chat.
Yeah, and I have the triad set up. So, so this is an opportunity for you to talk a bit to each other about what is rising up for you as you're listening to our presentation here. So even now, just begin to think about a leadership challenge that you're faced with. You know, just pick one. There are many, right? But pick one. And think about in what ways would it be helpful to be a learning leader if you're not already. And then if you already identify with being a learning leader, what are those qualities that you associate with being a learning leader? And then how have you been able to support learning virtually, right? So, and we just figured we were going to have this as a very structured triad, but I think maybe you just want to talk. So what we're going to do is just give you 15 minutes to talk. You're all good facilitators. Make sure that every person has a chance to speak. And maybe, you know, you get to speak a couple of times. We'll remind you when you have 5 minutes left. So take care of each other and share some of your thoughts in response to these questions. All right?
And Cindy,
right.
put us in the breakouts.
Oh no, I'm just about to do this, and David, you will be in a room by yourself, which you can then leave and join me in the big room. And Cindy, you are actually assigned to a small group. I hope that's okay. And so we will see you back on the other side in 15 minutes. Sometimes it takes some time to actually move into the breakout. Just be patient, you know, and sometimes you get stuck, and if you're stuck, we'll sort it out and we'll do the best we can. Sounds good? Thumbs up?
The instructions are in chat.
Okay, great. So we'll see you in a bit. people are coming back from breakouts. David, are you ready for your recording?
I am.
Oh, cool. So some of you made it into groups, huh? Good.
You may need to post the PDFs again when everybody's back in.
Yeah, there should be here when they leave the breakout. That doesn't, we'll check. All right.
Yeah, we can use the raised hand function for this one. What do you think?
Let's see how many there are. I want to just see who is going to be here. It's not unusual for people to drop off. Hi, Matteo. Hi.
Gisela, just so you know, I don't see the PDFs in the chat anymore.
Oh,
I
right.
had downloaded
So
them,
I will
so I
do
don't
it.
know if that makes a difference.
We got to put them back in, yeah.
I will. So I will just announce it right now. Okay, I'll do it quickly now. Okay. And then again, I'm getting really good at posting documents in chat. Hi, everybody. So welcome back. And we wanted to be sure you have some more material, additional resources available, and posted 2 chapters from our book, Visual Consulting, Designing and And this is where you can download it, and whoever is not muted, I will mute you. And because we're getting some background sound. So welcome back. So we want to take some time to hear from you. Sort of, you've had a chance to share some of your thinking with each other. And this is not so much a report out of what you talked about, but just, what are some things that you would like to share with us about these questions that we posed? And David, maybe, let's see.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, can you all see his screen? Wonderful. So what we will do is take a good 10 minutes to share some insights from all of you. And so are you all familiar with the raised hand function under participant? Well, you can raise your hand if I can see you. If you're not on the video, you can use the raise hand function on Zoom. Sounds good? All right, so I look forward to hearing from somebody who is ready to share. Kurt has his thumb up telling me that he got me, right? And then, but we have Joy, whom we can see, and she was used her raised hand function. Tell us, Joy.
I just wanted to begin first. Thank you. Wonderful to see you, Gisela and David, again, and
yeah,
great to be part of this exploration. So simply, I was wonderful listening to Leanna and Carol Lee, and it felt like at the core of our leadership challenge was not knowing about the unknown. It was we had this double screen of unknowns, and so just not knowing about what we don't know, and at the need for everyone to hear each other, co-creatively talk about it, explore it, key.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is to become aware of not knowing is scary. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah. So who else would like to share? Yes, Nancy. Nancy, unmute yourself.
Okay. So thank you, everybody. That was a great activity. And so what we talked about a little bit about, well, what we talked about each of our, what we were thinking about in terms of of what leadership is needed. So what came to my mind was, when I was faced as a business owner of Institute of OD, what is it that we need to do? So I went to, my first instinct was scanning the environment. So, and focusing what I do know about scanning the environment. So what we're trying to do, and Cindy and Patty are on my team, is that we monthly take a look at our business results, and then we look at what's happened during the month, and we try to make some predictions. They're not solid predictions because they're all unknowns, but we try to make predictions about what decisions do we need to make. So so my mindset is more of assessing current trends and somewhat trying to predict the future and trying to learn more about what that future might bring. So that's what I've been working on with my entire team, by the way.
Yeah, good.
Thank
Great.
you.
Yes, Matteo.
It's good to see you both, Gisela and David, and everyone else that's on this call too. My partner in the breakout room and I focused in on how both her organization and my own, as well as our clients, were, I don't know if easy is the word, but it was almost instantaneous transition to full virtual, up to like 97, 98% of our employees on both sides. And I'm seeing this across the government as well. So that's fascinating in one respect. It can be done. There's I think what bubbled up to the top is those pockets of managers that could use some help in really learning how to manage people, because they're still used to that butts and seats mentality. And their experience might be lack of control now that they're in this virtual space. I can't see my people. I don't trust them. I don't know if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. What's interesting, I think, I'm trying to bubble up some more from a thematic standpoint, is that as long, I don't know, as long as we're able to have a conversation, we can tackle just about anything together. And right now, the focus is in the forward, in the future. And so what might be, and what are we returning to from a workplace, office space kind of perspective? And personally, I can speak to, we're having conversations with our clients about reevaluating of what's the value of coming together physically and in person, and what's the point? And let's figure out those fewest, most critical things and activities and elements that we really want to be together to do, and everything else we can just continue to do that virtually, because it works.
Thank you, Matteo.
Yeah.
Vidas, I hope I'm saying your name right. Please speak. And you're muted. Yes. So not anymore.
Okay. So I was in the group with Marlene in group 2. And in looking at the challenges that I would use my scenario. And I think one of the major challenges that I face as a leader, I'm the principal for a technical school, and the major challenge is how to handle that pressure of transforming the team into the virtual learning space, which is kind of new in our setup. They are not used to it, and everybody is looking up to you to come up with some bright ideas, some leadership that is going to transform the scenario. But it's very challenging, because how to get them from point A to B when it's being created afresh. It's a new concept. They are not used to it, and all that. That is very challenging at this particular crucial moment. So that was my biggest challenge there. Okay.
Right. The question that comes to me about this is, what is it that we need to learn about to answer these questions, right? And Nancy, your question, your response about assessing is like, we need to be able to read the environment and assess what do we know? You know, it's sort of, for me, it's like, what are the questions we need to be asking to get the information that we can have, right? That's a lot of what the space is about. Yes, and Patty, thank you, Vitus, for sharing your questions with us. And Patty.
Thank you. My partner and I, Wendy, started talking a little bit about loss. And specifically, we talked about ambiguous loss and how these teams and these leaders need to be able to address that, because people are going through a loss and they need to be able to identify it and to be able to move on from there. So it was all about being, number one, to recognize it, that people have lost something, whether it's going into the office, seeing their friends, seeing their colleagues, and working together face to face, as well as being able to kind of be able to wield in this new world that they're in. And one of the things that we've noticed, both of us, is that with the people that we're dealing with, whether it be our participants or our clients, a lot of leaders have also stepped up. I think a lot of those leaders recognize that there are losses that have gone on, and they're taking steps to understand that and to recognize that. And I think that's really going to help organizations move forward in a good way. You've got to identify it.
I really appreciate that, Patty. And this is one thing we did not speak a lot about. You can't really fully engage a change process unless you deal with the loss of the letting go and the separation. We can get suspended or stuck in each one of those phases. And if we don't take care of the ambiguous loss, that is part of the energy gets stuck there. So there is work to be done there as part of the forward movement. You know, jumping ahead and just trying to solve the problem without addressing actually what's going on or creating a new future is challenging. So I appreciate that very much. And Kathleen.
My partner is also Kathleen. And what we had kind of talked about was you had got 2 of the 4 in the same room, so that was good. We talked about really kind of allowing that space and allowing people just to sort of get that out and just provide them with that time and with that ability to vent. I think what that also made me think of was, yes, we've gone into the virtual, and depending on the time constraints by which you need to make this change, that's a challenge. And also, sometimes you may have virtual meetings that are all venting sessions. So I think that's an additional challenge as well, because you want to have it be productive. But if you're going to go through these phases, sometimes that will happen. And I think you may walk out of a meeting not feeling so great. So those were some of the things that, from what Kathleen just kind of saying, giving that space, that's where it led me hearing some of the other thoughts as well.
Yeah, when things are destabilizing, it's hard to come from a grounded place. Right, you know, it's like we need to give ourselves some time to make the transitions. We can't just expect, oh, now I have adopted or adapted to the new. It doesn't happen like this. We gotta catch up in a way. And so
one of the things that's being revealed by this whole pandemic, where everybody's having to slow down, is that slowing down actually has a lot of positive value. And, you know, we've kind of embraced a world of hitting the target as fast as possible, maximizing. And it could be that that whole zeitgeist is part of the problem of just constantly trying to get bigger, constantly trying to do more faster. And so now you have a whole bunch of people who've gotten a little bit used to slower. And so that's going to be very interesting to see if any of that sticks or if the norms start shifting.
Yes, yes. So we have time for another comment. There is Marlene. I just saw Marlene Gautier.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I just wanted to add one comment that really kind of piggybacks on Kathleen's, just her last statement. One thing at our college that we're doing right now, and it's really, really been helpful, is our executive leadership team has set up a weekly communication with all of the staff and faculty at our college. And it's virtual, and the executive leaderships are in the conference room together, set up via WebEx. We use WebEx for our virtual meetings. And it is somewhat of a, just keep everybody with the best communication that we can, knowing what we know from week to week, just for the sake of letting everybody be able to vent. We have an open chat questions where everybody can just put in their chat questions, and one of our leaders is responsible for reading the questions out loud to everybody. And then our president responds and tries to answer them. And while it's really simple, it's really been so important to keep that communication going and open during this time. It's been attended, it's had great attendance, and it's really made quite a difference for us.
All right, very good. Actually, what I would like to do, I'm just feeling prompted to do this, is I'm going to put a link into chat for a blog piece. It's a bit of a longer piece I wrote on Communitas, if you're interested in that idea of what I shared earlier, because you're talking about communication, keeping people connected in this. It talks a little bit about this liminal pathways model, but it's mostly focused on all the ways people are coming together for a sense of hope and belonging in the time of change, and how helpful that is. So I just posting the link to that right now. And so we just have a few minutes left here to close. And
we have one more little slide here.
Yeah, we have one more slide.
I have to shift the sharing and share a different screen.
Okay, well, it's a good time to take a breath.
Here we go. And then you're going to close this out, but we wanted to let you know that there's a way that you can keep working. This is a cover of the book that we were mentioning that you got 2 chapters of. But Gisela and I have been creating a network called the Global Learning and Exchange Network that is global, and it's got about 60 or 70 active members now. We're doing a lot of different projects. It's dedicated to action learning and doing a lot of inquiry through real grounded projects. Also, the website for the Grove is shown here, as well as our 2 blog sites. Both of us write a fair amount and on lots of different topics. So,
yeah, and if I might just share, we do, in response to the crisis, David and I developed a new workshop called Virtual Leadership in Uncertain Times. We're actually running one this Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that's still open, and we have another one in August, to actually really go much more deeply into what it means to shift from being a strategic leader into a learning leader. And it's an opportunity for people to really work on a current change challenge in this situation right now. And so it is a place where people can make progress on their work, learn more about the liminal pathways framework, learn about how metaphors and framing are so important for getting a handle on what's going on, and then even doing some personal visioning for their change challenge. And there's a lot of triads, a lot of interaction. And so, you know, would love to have you, or if you have colleagues who might be interested, send them our way. So.
and you can find out about it right here.
Yeah, exactly, under our workshops. So.
Thank you so much. I think, Cindy, you close out?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you both so much, David and Gisela, for sharing this fantastic information with us and leading such a a vibrant and interactive session, and we just, I personally love seeing the graphic note taking, and I think it's really valuable and helpful. So amongst a lot of the other tools and facilitation that we saw here. But thank you again. And just before we part, and thanks for everybody who participated today. It was a very, very good session. Glad I got the opportunity to speak directly with some of you. And I know that it's great to connect with other people in our field. And, before you leave, if you had a really great connection, make sure that you do grab contact information so you can keep sharing and growing together. And of course, we'll have future GIODN events just like this for you to connect with one another. And let me tell you about some of those GIODN events coming up. So we have our book club coming up on August 4th. That book club is Supporting a Leader Through Change by Rick Rochetti, and he is the author. So we'll be very fortunate to have him. And that's August 4th at 12 p.m. To 1 p.m. That's Eastern Time, UTC -4. Then coming up in later August, we have a special speaker, the 7 Tenets of Positive Change 2020 with Diana Whitney. So she is a monster in the field. And so we're really looking forward to learning from her. And that session with Diana Whitney is going to be on August 26th from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time as well. And of course, don't forget to check out instituteod.com for your next certification in OD. And you can check out GIODN.org and all the events that we have there coming up to see. We have fantastic events going on from now all the way through the end of the year. We're going about 2 a month until the end. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And our special guests, Gisela Wendling and David Sibbet, thank you so much for your time and sharing your talents with us. And I feel a little bit more confident about working together and leading through these times of change. So thank you so much.
Thank you both very much. We really appreciate it. Great to see you both.
Thank you so much. Take good care, everybody.
Yeah, take care.
Yeah.
Be well, everyone. Be well.
Good to see you, Joy.
And we're going to be going in 3, 2, 1. Last goodbye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.